Now, the real question is, are the one-handed catches going to be coming from Daniel Jones or another quarterback? Because I keep seeing, again, this week, we talked about it not too long ago about like, hey, maybe it's not written in stone that Daniel Jones is the starter. And then I believe it was Connor Hughes, who covers both the Jets and the Giants for SNY, who had a quote about the Giants starting quarterback spot as well.
Yeah, Connor Hughes essentially said that the Giants quarterback depth chart is written in pencil, meaning it is subject to change. And the Giants are, of course, still expecting Daniel Jones to be their starter. They're planning on him being the week one QB1. But there is an element to this summer where we could see this turn into a competition. And I know that there's also some pieces being written today about Tommy DeVito talking about how he feels like he's starting at square one again and he wants to compete and make sure that he solidifies his roster spot. So the Giants quarterback room is just going to be really interesting to keep an eye on all offseason. How is Daniel Jones going to perform coming back from this ACL tear? Is Drew Lock really going to push him for that starting job? Will Jones even be healthy for week one? And then what happens with Tommy DeVito? Does he continue his Linsanity run? Does he get back on the field at some point this season? It's all going to be really interesting. It's a total mess. It's the last thing that I want as a Giants fan is to have your quarterback room in a mess, but it is going to be probably the most intriguing storyline throughout the offseason. So as we continue to get more breadcrumbs from reporters like Connor Hughes, this thing just continues to heat up and get more interesting.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I would imagine that Daniel Jones is the front runner to win that spot. And when it's all said and done, I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Jones is the week one starter. But we talked again, another thing we hit on recently in one of the episodes was it's probably a very real chance you see all three quarterbacks or at least two of the three quarterbacks this year for the New York Giants. But for Drew Lock, like, I don't know. He looked okay in a couple starts for Seattle last year. He won a big game against Philly. I'm sure you're happy about that one. They won 20-17. He threw for a touchdown. Again, didn't put up massive numbers in either of the two games. He had two picks in a loss against San Francisco the week prior in a game that he had to start for Geno Smith. But an upset win over the Philadelphia Eagles, kind of hanging around in that game, kept them competitive. I think you kind of sign up for that after, unfortunately, what Jones regressed to last year.
100%. And you mentioned it there. It's the Philadelphia Eagles that gets you so excited. The fact that Drew Lock was able to step in and perform well against them just kind of gives you some hope that if he does see the field and he does have to face some of our division rivals, well, he has some experience finding success against the Eagles. And any player that happens to kill the Eagles, get a come from behind win over them, or just embarrass them in any way, I love him. So huge fan of Drew Lock for that reason alone. Also, he has a very cool nickname that I probably can't repeat on the live show, but love Drew Lock. Think he's always been a fun personality in the NFL. And again, to have him on the Giants, hopefully beating up on some Eagles players next year, should be an exciting time.
You never know. And it's funny that it ends up being Drew Lock from the same quarterback class as the Daniel Jones one. I know one of my good buddies who's a big Giants fan, Drew Lock was his guy, and he wanted Lock over Daniel Jones and was kind of upset that Jones went that high. And things didn't really work out for Drew Lock in Denver, backs up a couple years in Seattle. And Daniel Jones has been the starter for the Giants with varying degrees of success. But as we've mocked here for the last few weeks, the vaunted year 6 leap for Daniel Jones, we're not sure if it's coming.
100%. And I do want to just keep pointing out Tommy DeVito exists. I feel like he's just been forgotten about because, obviously there was so much conversation this offseason about the Giants trying to go after Drake May, maybe McCarthy. They didn't do any of that. They're sticking with Daniel Jones, whether they want to or not. He's probably their starter. Bring in Drew Lock for competition. But I think that Tommy DeVito is competition as well. And I know that's probably a hot take, but I think that as a UDFA who didn't have a whole lot of experience, was really just thrown into the mix out of nowhere during the middle of that regular season, his ability to fight through that adversity, find any type of success that he found, whether you want to say it was within a system, he was holding the team back, I don't care. He won football games. He made some really good throws. He played some decent football down the stretch. I think that anyone that just counts him out is too hung up on the fact that he's an undrafted free agent. I made this argument during that stretch too, had a first round pick gone in because of injuries and made the throws and made the wins that Tommy DeVito made in that final stretch, all Giants fans would be saying future of the franchise, do everything you can to build around him. He is our quarterback. But because he was a UDFA and there's these advanced analytics that people like to use against UDFAs, everyone just says maybe he'll be a backup if he even makes the roster. But again, like I said, this was a first or second round pick that stepped in and had that kind of success. Giants fans are talking about him like he's the second coming of Christ, and that's not happening for Tommy DeVito. I don't think it's completely fair. He showed an ability to compete at an NFL level. He should at least be given a backup roster spot on this team, and I do think that he should be in the mix to compete for that starting job if it does become available through the regular season.
Yeah, you're right. Like there is some inherent bias where a quarterback is taking these guys. And Jet fans have seen it for far too long. Guys like Zach Wilson got a crazy long leash because he was a number 2 overall pick, where someone like Tommy DeVito unfortunately doesn't. He gets, a couple, back-to-back tough starts against the Saints and the Eagles. And it's like, all right, that's it. Like it's over for Tommy DeVito after, a nice 3-game run. And you don't know, like it very well could be that he's just a backup level quarterback, but the good news is you'll probably see a lot of him in the preseason. I would imagine. They need these quarterbacks to eat up, time in the second halves of these games. And I don't know. What do you think their plan would be for Daniel Jones in the preseason coming off the injury? How much or how little would you expect him to play?
I feel like he's not going to play, but I feel like he needs to play. Like how much rust is going to be on him? He wasn't playing particularly well last year. Again, I just think it's wrong to hand him the starting job because of his contract, and that's essentially what it's going to be. He was not playing at a starting level last year. He was not playing well enough to secure himself this job for the future. The injury is the only reason really that he still has the job, because everyone's just going to say, well, the situation was bad around him when he was playing and then he got hurt, so just chalk up the whole year to a mess and give him a pass on that one. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair to the other guys on the team. And I do think that he needs to earn the job back in the offseason and prove that he's capable of being the starter. And I think a lot of that has to do with playing in the preseason. But because he is coming off of this injury, it's very doubtful that we see him in the preseason, because I think it's going to be a very close call for him to be healthy at the start of the regular season. Now, I know that he has said publicly to the media that he's going to be ready for training camp. What else is he going to say? Obviously, he's going to tell that to the reporters. And also, I think there's an element of the fact that risking re-injury is going to keep him off of the field during the preseason due to his contract. But again, if you're holding this guy off the preseason field because of his contract and the injury clause and the potential risk of re-injury, why are you putting him on the regular season field where he's more likely to get hit and more likely to sustain an injury that adds your cap hit by another $23 million in the following offseason because of that clause? So this whole situation really is a mess, like I said. But what we see from Daniel Jones throughout the summer will obviously tell us whether or not we see him in the preseason or regular season. But I would assume that we don't see him until week 1. And even then, I'm not feeling confident in a quarterback who didn't play any preseason, barely practice all throughout the summer in week 1.
Yeah, and on top of that too, like when you did see him in the regular season last year, unfortunately, he wasn't very good. He had one good game against Arizona. Like that's the standout one where he had 321 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. But I mean, Dallas in week 1 was rough. Same thing against San Francisco and Seattle. Gets hurt against Miami, and then comes back and gets hurt against the Raiders, like almost instantaneously, but wasn't looking that great in that Raiders game. So I think you're putting a lot of faith in him if you're kind of just handing him the keys right back again, without really getting him much run in the preseason or training camp.
Yeah, and you're being kind there. He looked terrible in that Raiders game. It's not that he didn't look good. He looked terrible. He was missing throws. There were passes that could have been touchdowns that he missed into the sideline, like uncatchable, or he underthrew. He played very poorly in that game prior to the injury. The offense, in my opinion, moved a little bit better when he was out of the lineup. And overall, just throughout that season, again, even that Arizona game, it was a good half. It wasn't even a good game that he played. It was a good half. The Giants were down by 20 points at halftime. Daniel Jones was playing bad football. He was missing throws left and right. Had a great second half. Brian Daboll, the rumor is, the conspiracy theory is, he took over the play calling duties from Mike Kafka for that second half and led the charge to that comeback. Daniel Jones obviously was the vessel that got them there, and he played great in that second half. But that was the only flash of football that we saw. And again, that's my point. He's a former first-round pick. He was given this contract, had a great half of football, so people still believe in him. Tommy DeVito gave us 4 good games of football, but as an undrafted free agent, no one cares. So I don't know. I just think there's so much bias that gets played in, like you said. Zach Wilson, it happened with him. Darnold, Daniel Jones. I mean, the year 6 leap that we always joke about. The leash that this guy has is unbelievable. He needs to have the shortest leash in the world going into the summer, in my opinion. It's do or die right now. And like I keep saying, it's not good enough for him to be good enough because of that injury clause. He has to be a great quarterback this year. Otherwise, he's done. And everything that's gone into this prior season and leading up to this offseason, I don't know how he ends up having a good year based on everything that we've discussed. So it's just going to be really, really difficult for me to get behind Daniel Jones and really believe in him as the future starter. But I'm a Giants fan at the end of the day, so I'll root for him. I'll root for the team, and hopefully I'm wrong. But I think everything indicates this is going to be another tough year.